Hello and welcome back. We are here with another edition of Pass the Paper, and today we're opening up a file that honestly it feels a little bit forbidden.
It does, doesn't it? It has that kind of vibe. Like we're about to share secrets we shouldn't.
The keys to the back door of the exam hall.
But really what we're doing today is demystifying the whole process. We spent so much time in this series talking about the why of failure, the big academic reasons. But today is all about the how of passing, the pure mechanics.
Exactly. We're continuing our sub-series, Beyond 49%, and the title for today is ACCA Exam Tricks. Now, I want to pause on that word, tricks, because my brain, it immediately goes to the dark side, writing formulas on your calculator, hiding notes, that kind of thing. And that is absolutely not what we mean here.
Absolutely not. Let's be crystal clear on that. Cheating is the fastest way to get disqualified, not just from an exam, but from the entire profession. It's a career-ending move, full stop. When we say tricks, we're talking about what examiners themselves often just call good exam technique. But I prefer a different term.
Oh,
I call it exam engineering.
engineering. I like that. It sounds deliberate, structured.
It is a structure. It's about understanding the mechanical constraints of the exam, the time limits, the format, the way it's marked, and then engineer your behavior to exploit those constraints for maximum effect.
So it's the difference between the student who knows the textbook inside and out but gets a 49 because they ran out of time.
And the student who knows most of the textbook, but they understand the game, and they'll walk away with a comfortable 60 or 65%.
It's the behavioral gap, the secret sauce. Okay, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of all this, and we have a huge list, from time hacking to psychological resets, we have to put this into the context of the journey we've been on in the Beyond 49% series.
Yes. And if you're just jumping in now, that's great. Welcome. But I would seriously recommend that after this, you go back and listen to the foundations. You need the full picture for these tricks to really, really land.
Let's do a quick recap then, just so everyone's on the same page. We started this whole thing with Beyond 49% foundations level traps.
That was the bedrock, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We looked at those really early stage mistakes that, they come back to haunt students later on. Things like bad timing in the objective tests, treating it all like a memory test.
Instead of an understanding test.
Exactly. And just, poor study habits. That whole discussion was about building the right engine from day one.
Then we leveled up. We moved on to Beyond 49% skills level traps.
Right. And that's where the execution errors really start to bite you. We talked about that human calculator fallacy,
Right.
where students just crunch numbers and completely ignore the analysis, the so what.
The lack of integration between different parts of the syllabus.
That was all about learning how to actually drive the car properly, not just knowing what the parts of the engine are.
And then we hit the big one. Beyond 49%. Professional level, the beast.
The beast, yeah. And that was such a critical discussion because the game completely changes at that professional level, doesn't it?
Totally. It starts being about pure technical accuracy.
And it becomes all about judgment, about those 20 professional marks, and just handling the sheer pressure of a huge case study.
And most recently, we peeled back the final layer with Beyond 49%, the examiner's playbook.
Which was, I think, a real eye-opener for a lot of people. It was a look behind the curtain, how papers are designed, and more importantly, how the marking actually works.
The realization that the marker isn't a robot looking to fail you.
No, they're a human being, a tired, probably stressed human being who is actively looking for reasons to give you credit, and that one insight is the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today.
So we know the traps, we know the beast, we know the playbook. Now let's talk about the moves, the actual practical moves you make in that exam room to win. What's our mission for this session?
The mission is simple. It's to give you actionable behaviors. I want you to walk away from this with a literal checklist of things you will do in the exam. Things related to timing, to how you read the requirements, how you present your work, and how you manage your own head.
I love that. It's about engineering a pass.
It's time to stop hoping for a pass and start engineering one.
Okay, let's start with the absolute #1 killer. The reason for failure that is cited in almost every single examiner's report we've ever looked at, from AAA all the way down to PM time.
It sounds so boring, doesn't it? Manage your time. Everyone says it. Your tutors say it, your parents say it. But the reports just prove, year after year, that students fundamentally do not do it. The examiner for audit and assurance explicitly says running out of time is a primary cause of failure. The FR examiner says the exact same thing.
But we're not just going to say, watch the clock, are we? That's too vague. We need the trick, the engineering. What's the mathematical iron rule here?
It's the minutes per mark rule. You have to stop seeing the exam as a 3-hour marathon and start seeing it as a mathematical grid.
Huh.
A standard 3-hour exam, that's 180 minutes. The paper is for 100 marks.
Okay, so let's do the math. 180 divided by 100, that gives us 1.8 minutes per mark.
Exactly, 1.8 minutes. That is the heartbeat of the exam. That is your pulse. If a question is worth 10 marks, you have exactly 18 minutes. Not 19, not, oh, I'll just finish this bit. 18 minutes.
But hold on, does that simple rule really hold up at the professional level? Because the structure is so different there. You've got those 20 professional skills marks just for how you write, not what you write.
That is a brilliant and crucial point. It's a nuance that trips up so many people. Let's take AAA, Advanced Audit and Assurance, as an example. The exam is 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Okay, so 195 minutes total.
Right, 195. But you only have 80 marks for technical content and 20 for professional skills.
Yeah.
And you can't just write a separate answer for professional skills, can you? They're embedded in your technical answer.
No, of course not. You can't say, right, time to do my skepticism now.
Exactly. So the AAA examiner suggests a completely different ratio. They suggest you spend about 15 minutes at the very start, purely for reading and planning, just thinking.
Okay, so that leaves 180 minutes.
180 minutes to attack those 80 technical marks. Now the math changes.
Right. 180 minutes divided by 80 marks is 2.25.
2.25 minutes per technical mark.
Wow, that's a huge difference from 1.8 to 2.25.
It's massive. And think about the implications. If you're running on the standard 1.8 ratio in a professional exam like AAA, you are rushing. You are in a state of panic, writing frantically, when you actually have the time to breathe and think properly.
And the reverse is also true, I guess. If you use 2.25 minutes per mark in a skills level exam like PM,
You're dead in the water. You will leave the last 20-mark question completely blank. You've engineered a fail.
What about SBL, Strategic Business Leader? That's the 4-hour monster.
It is, but the reading load is immense. It's like reading a short novel before you even start writing. The standard advice there is to take a full 40 minutes, sometimes even more, just for reading and planning.
Okay, so 240 minutes total minus 40 leaves 200 minutes.
For 100 marks, so that gives you exactly 2 minutes per mark.
So the real trick here isn't just a vague watch the clock. It's doing this specific calculation for your paper before you even start writing.
Yes. The trick is to physically write the finish time on your paper or on your on-screen scratch pad. If you start a 20-mark question at 10:00 a.m. and your ratio is 1.8, you must finish at 10:36 a.m. You write 10.36 at the top of the answer. It's a contract with yourself.
Which brings us to the second and probably harder part of this time trick, the hard stop.
This is the single hardest discipline for any student to master. When your watch hits 10.36, you stop. You put the pen down, mid-sentence if you have to.
But that feels so wrong. It feels like you're sabotaging yourself. If I'm on a roll, if I just need 2 more minutes to finish this point and make it perfect, surely I should take it.
And that is the trap. That is the sunk cost fallacy and the perfectionist trap, all rolled into one beautiful, deadly package.
Why is it so bad?
Because of the simple truth. The first 50% of marks in any question are always the easiest to get. They're for the obvious points, the basic definitions, the straightforward calculations. The last 20% of the marks, the distinction level stuff, that takes a disproportionate amount of time and effort to dig out.
I think I see where you're going with this. So if I spend an extra 5 minutes polishing question 1 to get those last 2 really difficult marks.
You're not spending 5 minutes. You are stealing 5 minutes from the beginning of question 2. And the beginning of question 2 is where the low-hanging fruit lives. You are trading 5 minutes where you could have easily picked up 5 simple marks to just maybe score 1 hard mark in question 1.
The math just doesn't work. You're trading $1 for a dime.
You're trading a pass for a fail. The PM examiner complains about this constantly. Students spend way too much time on an early pet topic because it feels comfortable, and then they completely rush the questions at the end. You see scripts where question 1 is a work of art and question 3 is 3 bullet points and a prayer. That student fails every time.
So the trick is, the clock is your boss, a very strict boss. And if the boss says your time is up, it's up. Okay, so does the boss tell you which question to start with?
No. And that's the next trick. Strategic order of attack. It is a myth that you have to start at question 1.
I think a lot of us feel that pressure, though. It's question 1, it's the start, it just feels logical.
But question 1 is often designed to be the beast of the paper. In SBR, Strategic Business Reporting, question 1 is usually a massive, complex group consolidation. In AAA, it's the 50-mark case study. They're designed to be intimidating.
So if I open the paper and my first thought is, oh no, this is a nightmare, what do I do?
You flip the page. The SBR examiner has explicitly advised students to do this. If question 1 looks terrifying, go and find question 2. It's often about ethics or a current issue. It's standalone, it's usually more discursive, and less calculation-heavy.
That makes so much psychological sense. You knock out a 20-mark question you feel good about. You've got marks on the board. You're building confidence.
Momentum is a real, tangible factor in an exam. If you spend the first hour panicking over a consolidation, your brain floods with cortisol. You literally can't think clearly. But if you spend that first hour absolutely crushing an ethics question, you feel capable. You're in control. Then you go back to question 1 with a clear head.
And there's a specific nuance to this in AAA, isn't there? Something about the partner's email?
Yes. In the big Section 8 case study for AAA, you always get an email from the audit partner. The trick is to read that email first, before you read any of the exhibits, before you look at the financials, before you read any of the background info.
Why? What's the advantage?
Because the email is your roadmap. It tells you the exact requirements and the mark allocation. It might say, please evaluate the business risks for 8 marks, and then evaluate the audit risks for 12 marks.
So you know exactly what you are hunting for as you read the rest of the information.
Exactly. You aren't just reading. You are actively hunting for information. You need, say, 4 points for business risk and 6 points for audit risk. You're reading with purpose.
Yeah.
That's a massive time saver compared to reading passively and then trying to figure out what was important.
Okay, one final time trick before we move on. Protecting the professional marks. We've said it's 20% of the school in the professional exams, SBL, SBR, AAA, APM, ATX. That's a huge chunk.
It's critical. And a very, very common 49% behavior is to obsess over the technical details. Getting the balance sheet to balance to the last dollar, or calculating tax to the penny, and leaving absolutely no time to actually present the answer properly.
But the presentation is where so many of those professional marks live.
Exactly. In SBL or AAA, you can get marks just for the format. Using a proper briefing note header, a report structure, getting the tone of the language right. These are what we call easy marks. If you run out of time and just scribble your final points on a blank page without the to from subject header, you have just thrown away 2 or 3 marks that required 0 technical knowledge.
So the trick is to treat the formatting and presentation time as if it were for technical marks in your plan.
You have to treat that time as sacred. Never ever rush the formatting. If you have 2 minutes left on the clock, do not try to do one more complicated calculation. You'll probably get it wrong. Spend those 2 minutes ensuring your headings are clear, your structure is logical, and your tone is professional. That is a much better investment of time.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's shift gears into Section B, requirement interpretation. So we've managed our time, we're calm. Now we're actually reading the question. The golden rule here is always ATQA. Answer the question asked.
It sounds so ridiculously obvious, doesn't it? Answer the question. It feels almost insulting to have to say it.
It does.
But the examiner reports are just filled with these cries of anguish from markers saying they answered the question they wished had been asked, not the one that was actually on the paper.
So how do we stop ourselves from doing that? What's the trick to make sure we're answering the reality?
It all starts with the verbs, the command verbs. We call it the verb trick. You have to mentally or even physically, with the highlighter tool, underline the verb. These words are not interchangeable. They are very, very specific instructions from the examiner.
Okay, give us some examples. Let's start with a simple one. Calculate.
Calculate means numbers and labels. That is it. If the question says, calculate the tax liability, and you write a beautiful paragraph explaining why the tax rate is what it is, you are wasting your life. You get 0 marks for that explanation because the verb was calculate. The marker is just looking for a schedule of numbers.
Okay, what about explain?
Explain always requires a because. It needs a causal link. If you just state a fact, that's not an explanation. Revenue has decreased. Okay, that's the statement. Revenue has decreased because the company lost its main customer, as noted in Exhibit 3. That's an explanation. You get marks for the because.
And the big ones, evaluate or discuss, these are all over the professional level papers.
Evaluate absolutely implies balance. You must look at the good and the bad. If you're asked to evaluate this new project and you only list the benefits, you can, by definition, only get half the marks, maybe less. Evaluation requires you to weigh the pros against the cons. Discuss is similar. It usually requires looking at a topic from multiple perspectives.
I remember seeing this in the ATX, the advanced tax reports. Students would do a stunningly complex calculation when the question just asked them to explain the tax implication.
All the time. And the reverse is even more common. In PM, performance management, you get asked to assess the performance, and students will just calculate a dozen ratios and dump them on the page.
But that's not assessed.
No. Calculating a ratio is not assessing performance. Assessing is the next step. It's saying the gross margin has dropped by 5%, which is a worrying trend because it suggests their input costs are out of control. That's assessment.
This leads perfectly into the generic list trap. This seems to be the absolute bane of the AAA and SBL examiners' existence.
It's the #1 way to signal to a marker that you are a 49% student. Let's take that classic example. The question asks for audit risks in a scenario about, say, a pharmaceutical company.
Okay. The 49% student opens up their memory bank and writes down the list they memorized from a textbook. Risk of fraud, risk of management override, risk of incorrect evaluation.
Right, and those are all valid theoretical risks. They are true somewhere in the universe, but are they true for this company? The trick is to link every single point you make to a specific fact from the scenario.
So instead of just writing risk evaluation, what should I write?
You write, there's a risk evaluation of the new drug patent because Exhibit 4 states that its development was rushed and its commercial viability is still unproven.
Ah, I see the difference. One is a list, the other is a diagnosis.
Exactly. The marker in AAA says this explicitly. Markers pay for application, not memory. If you just dump a generic list, you're telling the marker, I have a good memory. If you link it to the scenario, you're telling the marker, I am a good auditor.
And it's the same for SBL, right? Don't just copy and paste the company's mission statement from the exhibit.
Oh, absolutely. The SBL report complains about that all the time. Candidates will copy the whole mission statement and just leave it there. The trick is to explain how a specific proposal violates that mission statement. The proposal to outsource manufacturing to a low-cost country violates the mission statement's commitment to local community engagement. That sentence is a mark. Copying the mission statement is 0.
Okay, let's talk about compound requirements. This is a really sneaky one where examiners can hide a lot of marks.
This is the silent killer. A question we'll ask. Calculate the financial impact of the new strategy. And D, explain the key non-financial implications.
And my brain just reads that as one big task. Do the strategy analysis.
But it's two. It's two distinct tasks. The trick is to physically split your answer on the page or on the screen. Use two separate headings, financial impact and non-financial implications.
And if you don't do that, what's the danger?
The danger is you inevitably focus on one, usually the calculation, because it feels more concrete, and you completely forget the other. Or you just mush them together in one big messy paragraph where the marker can't find the distinct points for each part. The APM, Advanced Performance Management Examiner, notes that students often miss the and. Financial and the non-financial. If you only do financial, the best you can get is half marks.
So the trick is simple. Count the verbs, count the ands, count the requirements inside the sentence.
Exactly. If it says calculate, explain, and recommend, that is not one instruction, it is 3. 1, 2, 3. So you need 3 headers.
This feeds directly into the role-playing idea. A lot of these questions, especially at the professional level, they give you a specific role to play. You are an audit manager. You are a consultant writing a report.
This is what I call the audience trick. In AAA and SBL, you're almost always asked to prepare a document for a specific person. And a briefing note for the audit partner is a very, very different document from an email to the CEO.
How different, really? Does the tone actually matter that much?
It matters for the communication professional marks. You have to think about your audience. An audit partner is a technical expert. You can use jargon. You can talk about materiality, ISA 560, going concern. They get it. Your writing should be concise, professional, and to the point.
And the CEO?
The CEO might not be an accountant at all. If you start quoting IFRS 15 regarding revenue from contracts with customers, their eyes are going to glaze over. You need to translate that into business language, impact on our reported profit, how shareholders will see this, the risk to our reputation.
So the trick is to literally write the recipient's name or title at the top of your answer to force your brain into the right mode.
Yes, 100%. At the top of your planning notes, just write audience, CEO, non-accountant. It acts as a mental anchor. Every time you look up, you see that note, and it reminds you to keep your language simple and business-focused. If you write like a textbook to a CEO, you will lose professional marks for poor communication.
Okay, that is a fantastic point. Let's move on to Section C presentation. We've touched on headings, but let's go deeper. The visual layout hack. Why does this matter so much?
You have to think about the poor marker. This goes right back to what we discussed in the examiner's playbook. They are marking hundreds of these scripts. They're tired, their eyes hurt. If they turn to your answer and see a solid wall of text, a full page with no paragraphs, no headings, no breaks, their heart just sinks.
Because they know they're going to have to dig for the marks.
And you never, ever want to make the marker dig. You want to serve the marks to them on a silver platter. The trick is one simple concept: white space.
White space. I like it.
Use it generously. Short paragraphs, 3 to 4 sentences maximum. Then leave a line, then a new heading. Use bullet points. Make it scannable.
It sounds so simple, but does it really change your final score?
It doesn't change the technical content of your answer, but it dramatically changes the findability of that content. Let's say you have 5 excellent points buried in one massive paragraph. The tired marker might spot 3 of them. But if you have those same 5 excellent points, each is a separate short paragraph with a line of white space in between, the marker sees 5. You've just gained 2 marks by hitting the Enter key a few times.
And using headings that are aligned to the exact words in the requirement.
That is the pro move. If the requirement asks for benefits and challenges of the proposal, your heading should be benefits and challenges. Don't get creative and call it positive aspects and potential downsides. Use the examiner's own words back at them. It's like a signpost. Here's the exact answer you asked for.
Let's loop back specifically to those big professional marks. Analysis and evaluation and skepticism. They feel so abstract. How do I actually demonstrate skepticism on a piece of paper?
It comes down to your language. The trick is to use specific trigger phrases that signal these skills to the marker. To show skepticism, you use phrases like, "This assumption from management appears to be overly optimistic because," or "This forecast needs to be verified against independent market data before we can rely on it."
So you're not just accepting the information given, you're explicitly challenging it.
Yes. The AAA examiner absolutely loves it when you challenge management's assertions. If management says, "We project sales will grow by 50% next year," a 49% student just accepts that number and calculates the profit. A 60% student says, "This growth target of 50% appears aggressive given the market downturn described in Exhibit 2 and should be challenged." That single sentence has just earned you a skepticism mark.
Okay, and what about analysis? We know it's not just stating the numbers.
No, it's the so what test. If you calculate that the current ratio has fallen from 2.0 to 1.5, you haven't done any analysis. You've just done a calculation.
Right.
Analysis is the next part of the sentence. The current ratio has fallen from 2.0 to 1.5, which suggests the company may face difficulties paying its suppliers in the short term, potentially leading to stockouts and lost sales.
So it's those connector phrases, which suggests this means that. The implication of this is that's what triggers the mark.
Exactly. You connect the fact to the business implication. That is analysis.
And what about for the more calculation-heavy papers, workings? The FM and PM reports always talk about working.
The workings trick. The rule is simple. Always show your workings. But the real secret weapon here is the own figure rule.
I love the own figure rule. It's the best safety net in the entire ACCA qualification. Explain it for anyone who might have missed it in our previous discussions.
Okay. Let's say you're doing a big net present value calculation. It has 10 steps. In step 1, you make a simple addition error. You get the initial sales figure wrong.
That's a nightmare scenario. The whole answer is going to be wrong from that point on.
The final number will be wrong, yes, but the process might be perfect. If you have shown all of your workings clearly, the marker will mark step 1 as wrong, 1 mark lost. But then they will look at step 2, and if you have used your own wrong figure from step 1 correctly in the formula for step 2, you'll get full marks for step 2.
So you could genuinely get 9 out of 10 marks for a question, even with the wrong final answer.
Absolutely, but only if you show your workings. If you just type the final wrong number into the answer box without showing how you got there, you get a 0, a big fat 0. Because the marker can't see your method, they can't award any marks.
So the trick is label everything. Working 1, sales calculation. Working 2, variable costs. Don't just have random numbers floating in space.
Never. Make it as easy as possible for the marker to follow your logic.
All right, this is all fantastic. Let's get into section D. This is where it gets really interesting for me. The psychology, the mind of the student in the exam.
Exam room behavior. This is where the battle is so often won or lost, regardless of technical knowledge.
We've all been there, the stuck moment. You're halfway through a question, you need a figure from a previous part, and you can't find it. Or you just have a complete mental blank. The panic starts to rise.
This is a critical fork in the road.
Wow.
The 49% student freezes. They stare at the page. They reread the question for the 10th time. They waste 5, 10, 15 minutes just trying to find that one missing number.
And what does the 60% student do?
The 60% student uses the flag and move on trick, or even more powerfully, the invent a figure trick.
Invent a figure. Wait, are you allowed to just make numbers up?
In a constructed response question where one part follows another, 100% yes. Let's say you need the total tax figure to calculate the net profit, but you completely blanked on the tax calculation. You simply write, assuming tax is $10,000, and you use that made-up $10,000 figure to complete the rest of the question.
That is genius. So you lose the marks for the tax calculation itself.
But you get all the available marks for the net profit calculation, for the profit margin analysis, for the recommendation, all based on your clearly stated assumption. You've saved the rest of the question.
You sacrifice 1 mark to save 10.
Precisely. It feels wrong, it feels unnatural to write assuming X, but it's what a professional would do in the real world if they had a data gap. They'd use a placeholder and move on. You have to do the same in the exam.
Does this apply to Section A as well? The multiple choice questions?
In a slightly different way. You obviously can't invent a number there, but the rule is you must never, ever leave a blank. There is no negative marking in ACCA exams.
So if you have no idea, you just guess.
You guess, you flag it for review if you have time later, and you move on. Instantly. If you stare at a 2-mark multiple choice question for 4 minutes, you are stealing precious time from the big, long-form questions where you can earn real marks. Pick your favorite letter, flag it, and go.
Let's talk about the panic of question 1. We mentioned earlier that question 1 is often the hardest, longest one.
It is. And panic is a physiological response. Your heart rate increases. Blood rushes away from your prefrontal cortex. You literally become less intelligent.
So when I feel that wave of panic rising, what's the move?
Stop. Just stop everything. Put your pen down or take your hands off the keyboard. Close your eyes. Take 1 deep 30-second breath. And then reset.
What do you mean by reset?
You have to treat every single requirement as a fresh start, a brand new exam. If Part A was a complete disaster, you didn't know the accounting standards, you couldn't get the group structure right, it's gone. It's in the past. Part B is a new universe.
That is so hard to do, though. You feel like the failure from Part A is bleeding into Part B.
That's the emotional trap. The marker doesn't care about Part A when they are marking Part B. They mark each requirement independently. So you need to answer them independently. Don't let one bad requirement sink your entire ship.
I want to talk about the reasonableness check. I think it was the F-Memo report that had a hilarious example of this.
Oh, the inventory days calculation. Yes. A student had calculated the inventory days for a company as 27 million.
27 million days. That's, what, more than 70,000 years?
Something like that. That inventory has been sitting there since the Ice Age. Now, obviously, the calculation went wrong somewhere, but the student just wrote down 27,000 and moved on without a comment.
Which just screams to the marker that you have no commercial awareness, no common sense.
Exactly. The trick is so simple. Take 5 seconds after every calculation and look at your answer. Does it make sense in the real world? If not, and you can't find the error in 30 seconds, write a quick note to the marker. I acknowledge this figure appears unreasonable, likely due to a calculation error which I cannot locate due to time constraints.
And that actually gets you mark.
It saves your credibility. It demonstrates professional judgment and skepticism. You might even pick up a professional skill mark for acknowledging the error, whereas just leaving an absurd number looks like pure incompetence.
And finally, let's talk about theory versus reality. This is massive for papers like SBL and APM.
It is. Students fall in love with their academic models. SWOT, PESTLE, Porter's 5 forces. And they try to force the exam scenario into the boxes of the model they memorized.
But the scenario is king.
The scenario is God. If the textbook says growth is generally good for companies, but the scenario says this specific company has 0 cash, high debt, and a risk-averse CEO, then you do not recommend a high-risk growth strategy.
So the trick is to use the constraints in the scenario to guide your answer, not fight against them.
Yes. If the scenario explicitly states the company cannot get a bank loan, do not finish your answer by recommending they get a bank loan. Use the constraints to force yourself to come up with creative, realistic solutions that fit the world you've been given. Reality beats theory every single time in these exams.
This has been absolutely incredible. So much practical advice. Let's try to summarize the key behaviors, the core tricks that you need to take into that exam room.
Okay, let's distill it down. If you remember nothing else, remember these. 1. Strict time discipline. Calculate your finish time, write it down, and obey the hard stuff.
2. Strategic order. Build momentum. Start with a question you feel confident about, not necessarily question 1.
3. Answer the verb. Underline the command verb and do exactly what it asks. Calculate means numbers. Explain means because.
4. No generic lists. Link every single point you make to a specific fact in the scenario. Application is everything.
5. Presentation matters. Use white space. Use headings that mirror the question. Make it easy for the marker to give you marks.
And 6. Psychological resilience. Manage that panic. Reset between requirements, and don't be afraid to use an assumption to invent a figure to save a question.
And remember the audience trick. Who are you writing to? Adjust your tone. These aren't shortcuts or cheats. They are professional behaviors that allow you to maximize the credit you get for the knowledge you already have.
And if you're listening to this and want to understand the why behind these tricks in even more detail, I really do encourage you to go back and listen to the full context of the series if you haven't already. Go back and check out foundations level traps, then skills level traps, then professional level the beast, and especially the examiner's playbook.
They all build on each other to create a complete passing strategy.
And hey, if this discussion helped you think differently about your next sitting, or if you have an exam trick of your own that we missed, please subscribe and let us know in the comments. We love seeing the community help each other out.
Absolutely.
So as you head back to your revision, remember the goal. It's time to stop just hoping for the best.
It's time to start engineering your pass.
And always
Think ahead to step beyond 49%.
good luck, everyone.
Good luck.